All right, folks, welcome to How to HORL. We just started carrying the new HORL sharpening system. We've had a lot of questions about rolling knife sharpeners before. We even tested one on a while back on the channel, not this one. And today I'm going to show you how to use one because we are now selling these at Knifewear. Back when we did our test, we tested another brand, not the HORL. And that brand is a knockoff of the HORL. There are many knockoffs of the HORL. The HORL is the original. It's made in Germany. It is designed in Germany. It is very well made. And I've felt this versus a this product, a knockoff product, side by side, and they're extremely different. We, for years, have been using whetstones to sharpen knives, and we still use whetstones to sharpen knives in our stores. But we have also, for years, been looking for a more accessible way for people to sharpen their knives that does a good job and doesn't damage the knives. There's a lot of quick and easy ways to sharpen your knife out there. We've, again, tested many of them on our channel, and a lot of them are very bad for your knife. So when we discovered the HORL and tested it extensively, we were very impressed, and that's what led to the decision to bring them into our stores. What really, at the end of the day, we like about this device is that it does the same thing as whetstone sharpening, but it makes it easier, more accessible. It automates some of the parts of sharpening that are very tricky, like finding the angle, and it makes it simple. So if you're a long-time user of whetstones, this may or may not be for you. But if you are somebody that wants to sharpen your knives, but doesn't have the time to get good at it, or just doesn't have the time to use stones at all, maybe you live somewhere remote and you can't come take a class in one of our stores, or maybe you have a reason why you can't use whetstones. I have a whetstone sharpening video with over 2 million views on it, and I've had a number of comments saying, hey, how do I do this if I have this disability or that disability? So for some people, whetstones aren't the answer, and so this gives you a really great edge in a very similar way, but is more accessible for a lot of folks. So we're very excited to be working with HORL. And like I said today, I'm going to show you how it works, how to get a good edge on your knife. The HORL is designed to sharpen any kind of kitchen knife, and it can do some other blades as well, but it's primarily designed for kitchen knives. If you have a Japanese kitchen knife, chances are it has what we call a primary bevel, which is this wide area here where the knife grinds down from the thicker part of the blade right to the edge. And that's going to do a lot to dictate how the knife cuts through food. It then also has the secondary edge or secondary bevel right on the edge there. The secondary edge is all we're sharpening today. And when you sharpen the secondary edge, the knife gets a little bit thicker. If you sharpen it a bunch of times, the knife gets really thick. And eventually, you're going to have a very thick primary bevel that isn't going to cut well. And so you're going to sharpen your knife and it's not going to feel very sharp. The HORL only works on that secondary edge. So eventually you are going to need to thin out this primary bevel. Now we have videos on that if you want to do it yourself. And that is why a lot of people choose whetstones, is because they're more versatile and can thin your knife as well as do the primary edge. You can also bring your knife to your local Knifewear store. We offer those thinning services when we sharpen knives. It's pretty standard for us. And so if you sharpen your knife a few times with the HORL and you're no longer getting that edge that you like, bring it to us and we'll thin it out. If you are a do-it-yourself person, you're going to want to get some whetstones to, at the very least, thin your knives out. If not, do the whole process. For me, at home, I have my honing rods and leather strops that I use for day-to-day maintenance. I have my sharpening stones that I use for, sharpening, repairs, thinning. This would fit somewhere in the middle where I can do that quick edge on my knife, but it's not going to do the heavy lifting that a sharpening stone will. The really cool thing about the HORL is that you have this little magnetic block that has two angles set on it. You've got a 15-degree angle on one side, you've got a 20-degree angle on the other side. Most of your Japanese knives are going to go over here. If you want a more rugged, kind of workhorsey kind of edge, you might want to give your Japanese knife a 20-degree edge. But say you have a knife from IKEA or a Western-style chef's knife, you're probably going to use that 20-degree edge. Today I'm sharpening a Tadafusa Hocho Kobo, really lovely, sharp, thin, affordable Japanese knife. So we're going to set it to 15 degrees. So you set your knife on the angle guide there, lay it flat on the table. It's got little rubber feet to hold it in place, which is great. And then the HORL Sharpener comes with two sides. It comes with a coarse diamond grit that's around a 400 grit stone and a finer ceramic deburring wheel that is closer to about 1,000 grit. So we're going to start on the coarse side, which is typically how you start when you're sharpening. All you have to do with the HORL is hold it in the middle and then just roll it back and forth along the knife, like so. A couple of things to note as you're using it. Number one, you want to make sure you come all the way back to this heel of the knife, because if you don't sharpen all the way there, your heel's going to end up a little higher than the rest of your edge. And so the knife is going to have a different edge profile than it was when it was new, and so you want to maintain that profile. I prefer to take my time and make sure I get that whole edge rather than going back and forth really fast like this and missing most of the edge. So nice and slow like so. And then same thing when you get to the tip of a knife curves down pretty aggressively. And so you actually need to roll the HORL around that edge a little bit. I kind of sweep it around like this so that you get that whole tip of the knife. And so this is the same action that a rough grit whetstone would have on your knife, getting that initial edge ground on the knife. We're going to feel for a burr. A burr is a rough bit of steel that's folded over the edge, and it feels kind of like Velcro or a scrubby pad on the knife. It's going to appear on the opposite side of the knife than you were sharpening, and you want to feel for that burr all the way along the edge and make sure it's there all the way along. Sometimes certain parts of the knife will take longer to get a burr because those are the parts of the knife that you use the most, and they take longer to grind. So if you use the front of your knife more, you might find that it takes longer to get a burr, and you might want to do the whole knife longer. The reason you do the whole knife is so that you don't grind one part of the knife more than the rest of the knife. I can feel a burr all the way along, so we're doing pretty good. If you do 10 or 20 strokes and you don't feel that burr, what you're going to want to do is flip the knife around and work on the other side. You're going to want to do this because you don't want to grind the blade all the way on one side of the knife and then just finish on the other side, because you'll end up with an uneven or lopsided edge. So if your knife is very dull, do 20 strokes on one side, 20 strokes on the other side, and go back and forth until you start to feel a burr. Now we're sharpening the second side of our knife. We've raised a burr on the first side of the knife. We flip the knife around so it's pointing towards us. Obviously, as with anything, be careful. You do have the edge facing up, so just keep your fingers well away from that edge and you'll be fine. And same action, back and forth. You can run the HORL into the handle of your knife a little bit if you're not careful. So if you wanted, you could always wrap some painter's tape around the collar of the handle just to protect it. And this is actually my first time ever using this. Our purchasers tested this pretty heavily before we brought them in, but I have never tried the HORL before. And I gotta say, it's pretty easy. You know, I'm a diehard whetstone guy, but I do appreciate how simple this is. I think any member of my family could sharpen a knife this way and not really struggle with the process. Okay, so like I said before, I've got a burr back here, but the front of the knife was more dull, so I'm gonna work the whole blade a bit more just to make sure I get a burr all the way along. So we have finished on the coarse side. We've raised a burr on the second side of the knife. All we're doing now is flipping the knife back around, and we are deburring. So when you raise a burr, that is an indication that you've sharpened all the way through to the other side of the knife. And that's very essential when you're sharpening a knife. But leaving that burr on the edge can mean that it kind of gets in the way of the edge and doesn't allow you to cut through like a tomato skin or something delicate very well. So we're going to remove that burr with the finer ceramic side. And we're just going to work the exact same technique. I believe they recommend about 10 strokes back and forth. I always like to feel for a burr when I'm deburring, but the good thing is that you can always go back and, you know, you can go cut something, see how it feels. If it's a little rough still, you can always go back and do some more. And one thing to note, your instinct might be to roll this thing in your hand, but the stones roll independently of the middle, so you just kind of pinch the middle with your hands and just slide it back and forth, and the wheels do the rest for you. Okay, coming back to the other side. One thing you do want to be careful of when you are deburring, the grooves in the stone can actually kind of trap the tip of the knife there if you angle it too much. If you keep it angled kind of with the edge, you should be okay. But if you curl around too much, you can catch it as you're coming back and get the tip of your knife there, so just be careful. Like I said earlier, the name of the game is just take your time, be consistent. Same as whetstone sharpening, you don't want to rush the process. You want to go nice and steady and you'll get better results. We have just finished sharpening with the gear that is provided in the box. So we're going to see what kind of edge that gives us with just the basic HORL setup. Yeah, that's, I mean, it's you know, a 400 grit-ish edge. It's sharp, right? That's going to rip through a tomato skin. It's not sashimi slicing sharp, but it is definitely like cut a whole bunch of vegetables sharp. I can still feel a pretty big burr on the one side of the knife. And so if you wanted to remove that with just everything that comes in the box, you go back to that deburring side and you kind of switch sides. You do a couple strokes on one side, a couple strokes on the other side, back and forth. The way I would remove it, because this is what we use to maintain our knives at Knifewear, is a ceramic honing rod. And I would just set the knife at 15 degrees and just run it down there a few times. I do this after I sharpen my knives, especially if I'm giving the knife a bit of a coarser edge. You can also use a leather strap, but we'll get back into that in the next little bit here. That's definitely better. Let's see how it cuts. Much nicer, yeah. For a Western knife that's a softer steel, that's a great edge. Really nice, and we call that a toothy edge. It's gonna bite into like pepper skins and tomato skins really well. And honestly, I'll sharpen some of my Japanese knives that way if they're getting that like real workout, if they're my prep knife and I'm doing a lot of chopping with them. But we're all about high performance. So let's see how high we can take it. HORL has an upgrade kit, and it comes with 2 finer whetstones, like a fine and a super fine, they say. Luckily, it's lasered on the back, so you can tell which one's which. And they are, I believe, a 3 and a 6,000 grit. HORL has a more entry-level model that you can't change the plates on, but if you get this guy, if you get one of their higher-end models, then you can just remove that plate and pop on a new one. Feels good. Feels like a fine grit whetstone, because that's what it is. All right, we finished with the fine. We're on to the super fine. You know, same technique. It's this part's kind of boring, but when you are polishing an edge and giving yourself that extra fineness that you want to spend that extra time. These fine stones work more slowly, and so do those extra strokes. You're not going to really feel a burr at this stage. So it's more just a matter of polishing. You can look at the edge, see if it looks shinier. You know, if you're very practiced with this kind of thing, you'll develop an eye for it. But really, it just is a matter of spend several minutes on one side, spend several minutes on the other side, go cut something, see how it feels. We have just polished up on the 2 fine stones. You'll notice that the HORL, as with any sharpening system, it does, you know, you're grinding steel and you're actually grinding a little bit of the stone. And so you're going to end up with a little schmutz on the blade. And so you just want to wipe that off with a cloth, give it a rinse. You know, with sharpening stones, you're using water as a lubricant, and so the water washes that away. So if you are trying this out as a sharpening stone user, you're going to notice that buildup. It's going to be something you're not super used to. And so you just want to rinse it off. It's easy to deal with. We're going to strop the edge. Leather is commonly used to smooth out edges of knives. Yes, it is just leather. You can use other things, but leather is shockingly good at grabbing onto those burrs and pulling them off. And so I start on the rough side of the strop. I set my angle at around 15 degrees. Sometimes you even want to go a little higher than the blade angle because it helps catch those burrs a bit better. And if you're gentle, you won't mess up your edge. You don't need a lot of pressure here. It's very, very light. And it's kind of like you're spreading butter or peanut butter across toast. Just kind of sweeping that edge. And you'll hear it scraping. That sounds pretty smooth. Those rougher patches are where you have that burr, where it's still left on the edge. You can even do these kind of sweeping motions like this, but working in small little sections is usually better, especially if you're a beginner. A little easier to get the hang of. We're gonna flip to the smooth side and do the exact same thing. Real easy. Lay the strap flat on the table, find your angle about 15 degrees. If you're not sure what 15 degrees looks like, if you're new to sharpening, that's 90 degrees. A third of 90-ish is 30, and half of 30 is 15. You're eyeballing it, but it's not a bad way to figure it out. The nice thing about stropping, it's really easy to just do more of it, and you should do this regularly to help maintain your knife. Using a ceramic honing rod or a strop or both in between sharpenings, a couple times a week, daily even, helps your knife stay sharp a lot longer and means you don't need to sharpen it as often, which means your knife lasts longer. Oh yeah, that's a lot smoother. Yeah. That feels great. Those fine stones made a real difference. So if you are looking for that like out of the box kind of edge for your Japanese knives, you're going to want to grab those. That's pretty good. If you are not inclined to use whetstones, you're not able to use whetstones, this is going to do a really, really excellent job. And if you are somebody that loves using whetstones, but maybe you're like me, you got a couple of kids, you got, a busy life, you got other hobbies, it is a pretty good way to give yourself that quick tune-up. And then, when you have the time, set aside a couple hours in the evening, then you can do that like more in-depth sharpening. All right, that was how to use the HORL knife sharpener. Pretty straightforward. If I missed anything, if you have questions, if you are, uncertain about this and you want to know more, leave us a comment down below. But again, what I like is that it does the same thing as a whetstone, a sharpening stone, but it makes certain parts of the process easier for people where sharpening just isn't that easy. So I recommend checking it out. It's super fun. And if you do want to learn how to use a sharpening stone, go check out my other video. Thanks for watching.